This episode of Sewing Out Loud is brought to you by The Confidence Stitch. Go to sewhere.com/confident and use code SEWHERE15, that's SEWHERE15, to get 15% off all denims and jeans patterns during the month of March 2019. Thanks, Confidence Stitch.
Welcome to Sewing Out Loud, the official podcast of Zede Sewing Studio. Here are your hosts, Zede and Mallory.
Sewing Out Loud. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Mallory Donahue.
And I'm Zede Donahue. And I believe we're in rare form today.
Once again. And actually, it's kind of funny. I think that today is well, I don't know. Maybe every day is sort of an embodiment of this podcast. But today we're going to talk about chronic illness and sewing. And we tried to record this once before. And it was sort of like hard to figure out like how much of Zede's story to include. And so Zede like told her entire...
So she told me to elaborate, and then I did, and then she told me I elaborated too much.
And
so I didn't know what to do. And,
I still have it recorded.
If you're going to tell me what to do, I want the directions to be much more specific, and I will do what you say.
I have it recorded. I did not delete it. I don't think it's
I'll delete it. Who cares?
I don't think it's a bad thing, but
excuse me, I can do it again, and probably better.
Yeah, okay. So we sort of talked about Zede's whole thing, but we don't talk about your chronic illness very much. So let's just excuse me. Let's just get people up to speed. What's wrong with you?
You mean aside from the mental issues?
Well, we're going to talk about mental issues in this podcast. Okay.
I meant like the personality deficits.
There we
That's
go.
what I was talking about.
Yes.
Personality deficits.
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Well, I have Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So my immune system doesn't like parts of my body. And with Crohn's disease, they call it an inflammatory bowel disorder. Okay. Because the bowel is one of the most significantly affected usually when you have Crohn's disease.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, when I say bowel, it's really the digestive tract. So it can affect you from your mouth to your butthole.
That's right.
Right? So the whole lumen that is going through your body can be affected, and all of it or some of it or parts of it.
I like the term from stem to stern.
That's right.
That's what I like to hear the doctors say.
That's right.
So Zede was...
but what I want to say,
go ahead,
because let me finish, it's my disease.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm so sorry.
I'm going to own it. But what I really want people to know is it's not a bowel disease.
Okay.
It's your bowel is affected. My joints are affected. My skin is affected. My eyes are affected. There's all these other things that are affected. It's just that I think most people hear about the bowel, or, if you're with someone with Crohn's disease, you realize they keep running back and forth to the bathroom. Okay. You don't realize that maybe their skin is bothering them or, these other things. So people think it's just a gut disease. And that's where you get all your recommendations on how to cure yourself too, is eat this, don't eat this, or whatever. But I want people to know that. And I think, it's the same way with somebody, say, has psoriasis. It's not just a skin disease.
Yeah, and we'll actually...
other parts of those people, other things are bothering those people that you cannot see.
I think that's going to definitely come up with some of the feedback we got from our audience, which I think is lovely. Yeah. And I also want to say, if you have kept on listening to the podcast, Zede and I have a sense of humor about almost everything in life.
And thank God about poop too.
Yes. And so when we're laughing about these chronic illnesses, we're not mocking anyone in the beginning here.
Just me. She's mocking me, probably.
Okay. It is one of our coping mechanisms, I think is...
Well, and honestly,
sort of joking.
You have to kind of laugh through it. If you take it real seriously, it really will get you then.
I think because it
is kind of a bad joke on you. It's like the worst practical joke that ever happened to you.
It's out of your control, So anyway, if if that's not your cup of tea, if that's not how you address your chronic illness or whatever, like I understand, but that's where Zede and I are coming from.
Well, and I think that's really important because my Crohn's disease is not like your Crohn's disease, and my chronic illness is not always like your chronic illness.
Yeah.
Everyone is different.
Uh-huh.
And each disease can manifest itself differently in each person.
Yeah, so I got a lot of responses from people And I wanted to frame this conversation. There's a lot of negative things about chronic disease, right? Like,
oh no, everything's
I was
negative.
gonna say,
Excuse
what's
me.
the
When
positive?
people go, oh no, honestly, no, there will be people like the bloggers and stuff, and they're like, I've learned so much from my disease, and I'm like, I could have done without that.
Yeah,
I didn't need to learn it that way.
need to
There
learn
could have been an easier way for me to learn it. I mean,
There you go.
and that is a positive attitude, and there's nothing wrong with it. But like, I guess I'll see something and it'll say, I'm grateful for my Crohn's disease, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I would never say I was grateful for my Crohn's disease.
Well, so
I'm grateful that
yeah.
I can deal with my Crohn's disease.
Right.
That's what I am.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's another good point. Like you
Right.
said, my Crohn's disease and my experience of it is different from yours. And
Right.
that okay, so I asked 2 questions in the last love note. If you're not signed up for the love note, go to sowhere.com/love note and you can get our weekly newsletter that I lovingly send out. And I asked 2 questions for people to respond to about this, because we do want to talk about it sort of in relation to sewing. And I said, what's the biggest obstacle that keeps you from sewing? And then I asked, how is sewing beneficial in managing your chronic illness? So I did want to kind of frame the conversation to be a little bit, positive and negative, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. Do you want to put a value judgment on your experience? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I wanted to frame it around the coping part. And because
Right.
I think I wanted to help, I want to highlight for other people out there, like, you're doing such a good job, or like I wanted to give people a little boost,
Credit.
like
Yeah.
I know that's not that you're all probably not like, oh,
Well,
now Mallory
I
said I
mean-
did a good job, my chronic illness
I
is
mean, there are people that get the diagnosis and, what should I say, surrender to it? I don't know. I don't know a good word. But what I'm saying is,
yeah,
you
different
know,
outlooks,
like they're
or-
like, oh, my life. And believe me, no, your life will never be the same.
yeah,
But I don't know what I want to say. Like, I was like mad about it. Like,
yeah.
like I'm like, okay, Crohn's disease. We'll just see who wins.
So
at
no
this.
matter-
and it doesn't mean that I win every day or every minute.
Right. So no matter what, no matter how you're dealing with it, I thought these 2 questions were kind of a nice way to explore this in relation to sewing. So another theme of these responses is many people answered and they tried to diminish their diseases. Don't you think that's really common for people with chronic illness?
Do you mean that? Well, yes,
Say,
because you
I
don't
don't know if this counts, or I don't know if this is something you want to hear about, or I don't know if, I know a lot of people have it worse than me, or stuff like a lot of that preamble.
And here's what I think that is,
Mhm.
okay? Part of it is you don't want people to think of you as sick.
Yeah, maybe.
Or
Mhm.
because I think sick means you're less of a person. You can do less, be less, and like I don't unveil everything to
Sure.
everyone I meet right away. And then sometimes it's like, maybe I have to. Maybe I have to tell this person I've not known for very long. I'm in this
That you
situation
have this challenge.
that I might have this happen to me today.
Yeah.
Or, at least make them sort of given the, and then there's the challenge of when you do tell them, they say, oh, my
My cousin.
my roommate's, my ex roommate's cousin had that and they got cured because, they ate rocks, and you're like, oh my God, I got to hear, like, and not all advice is terrible.
Right.
But some of it is just like, you don't understand what I have and I don't feel like explaining it even.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to just start off with one response we got, or maybe 2 responses we got, and then I want to talk about your responses to the question.
Oh,
Does that
okay.
sound good?
Ugh,
Okay.
I don't know.
So actually, I did want to start off, your situation kind of starts off kind of in this physical realm, I feel, right? Like, sort of. And I feel like medicine is sort of blurring the lines now between like the mental and the physical, and what parts of the body can affect, mental health. Like, don't you think we're learning that much of the immune system is located in the gut, like
Right.
you say, and everything. So anyway, this one is from Lauren, and I asked if I could say people's names or not. So Lauren says, I'm not sure if postpartum PTSD and postpartum depression are considered chronic, but I do feel relevance here. So mention if you feel appropriate. So yeah, I mean,
I bet they feel chronic while you have them.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
You know?
that might not be the clinical label,
Sure.
but if it goes on for more than a couple weeks, that's
Yes.
getting kind of, I would say, it's certainly chronic for you right then. It's
So-
not something that's acute and over right away.
Yeah. So, what's the biggest obstacle that keeps you from sewing? Sleeping, exhaustion are my biggest hurdles to jump through. There are days that I sleep all night and get up with my preschooler, and he goes to his grandparents' house so I can nap in the afternoon longer than he naps. Sleep is one of the only ways for me to cope with postpartum PTSD and postpartum depression. And then, how is sewing beneficial? In managing your chronic illness, she says, the other way of coping with PPTSD and PPD is sewing. It keeps me focused on a task that has a positive outcome. Even if something doesn't work out just right, it's more positive than recent experiences. It is almost as if I'm in a different world when I'm sewing, and all the cyclical thoughts can leave me alone. So I think that is so awesome to share the brain
Right.
aspect
It's
of
escape, a
this.
redirection.
Yeah, or an escape. I'm not a doctor. I know this, right? But I remember.
please.
Remember.
Please consult your physician
Consult your
and don't
physician.
consider this medical advice.
No, but I remember watching. It was one of those like celebrity shows with like a celebrity psychiatrist, and he said something to one of the people. He said, "Don't do anything dissociative." He was like, "Don't do." This lady said, "I make art and I just forget where I am."
And
you
he
know,
said that?
He said, "You need to. It could be a coping mechanism, but you need to deal with your life too." He's like, if you dissociate, he kind of like likened it to self-medicating in another way, and so I think sewing can kind of connect me to myself in some ways, and I feel like that's kind of what Lauren was saying. So an escape, yes,
yeah, I mean, disassociative is probably a
Diff-
clinical term,
right.
That you are ignoring that you have this and not addressing it at all.
Yeah, that's what
right.
Yes,
I would assume that's what
So
he
she
meant,
said
because I do like to sometimes forget I have this,
So
if it's possible.
Yeah, so she said
Yeah.
it's bringing up positive experiences for her
Yes,
to have
yes,
right now.
yes.
Right now.
Well,
breaking those cyclical thoughts.
And there's something about feeling productive.
Yeah.
There's something about feeling competent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
When people are sick, I mean, this I know from my nursing background, and I used to see it.
Yeah, Zede
You
was a
would,
nurse. Zede
someone,
is a nurse.
yeah. Oh, an old,
She is
old
not
nurse.
dispensing medical advice, though.
No, I am not recommending anything or diagnosing or prescribing. But what you could see happen psychologically to people is, say a family member was diagnosed with cancer, and the family would want to take like all the decisions away from the person, like, oh, they have cancer, so now they can't think. No, that's not that. That's not how it
So
works.
it's giving them some agency, or not taking away agency.
Right,
Yeah.
right. If anything, you should be that person's advocate and
Yeah.
say, I understand you have this. Where are you coming from? What do you need me to do for you? Not, I'm going to do this for you.
Right.
It should be, what do I need to do for you? What helps you? Right.
Okay, and then this person, I don't think told me if I could say their name or not, so I'm not going to say their name.
Nameless person.
This person says, the chronic condition that they live with is bipolar disorder. The biggest obstacle that keeps me from sewing is twofold, both as a result of mental illness. Sometimes it's a combination of the physical and mental exhaustion, usually directly caused by depression. Sometimes, though, it's the complete mental fog / distraction / overwhelm / general used upness that can be worsened by depression / hypomania / mania / medications. Clear as mud, right? Welcome to my brain.
Oh,
That's
man,
what they say.
yeah.
And then sewing is beneficial in managing my chronic illness in many ways. Even when I am unable to sew and even unable to plan or dream about sewing, I can still look forward to days when I will be able to again. The rest of the time, sewing is a practical, satisfying skill. The rest of the time, sewing is a practical, satisfying skill to repair and frugally make things and mend them on a disability income. So that's helpful.
And I think that's where you get that feeling of
Yeah.
productiveness or competency
So-
or whatever.
She also says it's a woman. Okay. My garment sewing gets me through all manner of daily challenges. It fuels my creativity. It is my habitual path to mindfulness and finding flow, even when my brain has mostly felt like my enemy. I often sew in spite of my messy brain and messy space. Sewing is my best daily therapy. It lets the meds and cognitive work be the other effective tools I use. So another tool in the toolbox. I want to. And let's talk about your answers, and then I would like to talk about that productivity part of the conversation that we're having. So, Zede, hold on.
Now she hasn't told me these before, so this is
well,
truly.
I told him to you 10 minutes ago.
This is
or
off the cuff.
What's the timestamp on the?
I haven't had time to think about this or.
What's the biggest obstacle that keeps you from sewing?
Energy and pain.
Yeah. And so.
And it could be pooping, but here's the deal. Okay.
We talk about
Thank
about
God
poop all
we've
the time.
always talked about poop and you have, I can't imagine being in a family and having this disease and not being able to talk about your poop because it can become literally something you're doing every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing about pooping a lot is it takes your energy too, and it takes your energy and it causes pain and all that. But besides that, so even if my bowel is calm, right?
Sure.
I still have pain and I still have the energy, and the energy just halts sometimes. It's like I hit my wall and I didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
And we could go talk about the spoon theory. I'm sure a lot of people out there speak of themselves as spoonies, which when I was in nursing school, we called them chips. Like you had so much energy, you had so many chips, and once you used them up,
it was,
right. It's energy and pain. And then, who was speaking of depression, which both these people talked about depression.
These were
so
two
if you
that
don't have
happened to be-
energy and you have pain, what does that lead to? It spirals you like into. I mean, I constantly will go, don't get depressed. What can you do not to be depressed, especially when I'm sick or I'm down? What I call it down. Yeah.
So since we didn't go through your whole entire medical history, but when you got to a place where you could actually leave the house after your gigantic health crisis.
Right. Well, I could leave the house if I didn't eat for 2 days.
There you go.
Right.
You started to see a counselor, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I saw her. I was still having some trouble. I remember her saying to me, I would like you to go out, and walk around your block every day. Like get air, get exercise, that kind of thing. Now, she didn't know where I lived. I don't have a block to walk around. I'd have to walk around my pond or whatever. And I said, I can walk around the exterior of my house. And she said, what? And I said, no, I can't be any farther from a bathroom than that.
Yeah.
That was how, and I'm not exaggerating. I could go to the bathroom, and I'm talking about pooping, guys. I could go to the bathroom as many as 30 times a day. That's more than once an hour.
Yeah. At that point, okay. So
talk about getting tired.
Well,
let me
and
tell
talk
you.
about weaving together the mental and the physical and the the energy. I mean, when I don't get enough sleep, or when I've had little babies or something, just from that.
And I would have trouble sleeping, and I had all this pain, and then they'd say, well, maybe we should give you something to sleep. And I'd say, but then I'll poop on myself.
Because I can't,
Right. I had to be alert enough to get up and go to, and it was, it was an urgency issue. So and then they also talked about the drugs.
Right.
Like you're taking this drug and you're going, well, it's saving my life, but it's the devil's brew.
Right.
So like you're accepting a certain amount of side effects to maybe get through a crisis or get through as much as you can get through or whatever. But none of it is easy.
Yeah. So the amount of pain that you have from the Crohn's surprised me. As somebody who didn't know about Crohn's before you got it, but then I've met other people with Crohn's and they talk about it a lot. And
some people don't have as much. Yeah.
But a friend of mine, her husband has pain, and I was like, my mom has all this back pain, and she goes, oh yeah, my husband will just be in so much pain, So anyway, Mom, how is sewing beneficial in managing your chronic illness?
Well, I had to tell you, initially it was very sad for me because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it was a loss. Like in the beginning, that I could not do it like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I couldn't spend the energy on it like I used to. But it was, somebody said I had it to look forward to for my better days.
Yeah.
And that is true. And there are things I can do. I draw. Sometimes I'll draw in bed.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm really bad, I'm on the heating pad taking pain medication and drawing, a garment. And usually it comes out fine. Now, so it helped me reestablish that feeling of usefulness, of competency, I think, that, having that huge crisis. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like, everything was sort of taken away from me sort of at once.
Yeah.
And to get back into it, that's what it did for me. Now, it's also something that I believe you can do at different levels.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this little bit of sewing.
Right.
Right? Oh,
Right.
I can go up and hem my jeans and feel accomplished. Oh, I can, or on the other end of the spectrum, I can design and make, this fabulous, sparkling, wonderful costume that no one else can do but me.
Right. Right.
So you have those levels.
Right.
Like, so the other thing I do is aerial, right?
Uh-huh.
So with aerial, there's not like,
Let's mention Adam here. Adam, did you know that ZD does aerial?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, Adam, how about that? But was it ever mentioned before?
Did we ever talk about it? I don't know if we talked about it.
But I have to be in pretty good shape when I go to class. I
Right.
have to have a lot of energy. I can't. I don't want to be pooping.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I want my gut to be pretty calm. So the sewing, it's at home.
Right.
I can do it on a low scale. I don't have to have all the energy in the world to do it. So that's what I think is good about sewing, because it's a spectrum.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Where some other things,
Right. You're not going to go like run a marathon. Like that's not, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, even paddleboarding, and I paddleboard, that's one of the things that I really like and everything. If my gut's acting up, I really can't go out on the water.
Right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about a couple more responses to our questions, and then maybe what, I don't know, like just a little maybe like education on chronic illness, a little bit more discussion of that. Okay.
We'd like to welcome back the Confident Stitch as our sponsor for today's episode of Sewing Out Loud. Kate and her team run a fabulous garment-focused sewing store in Montana, but you can access their inventory of fine fabrics and patterns from anywhere by shopping their online store.
This month, when you shop at The Confident Stitch, use code SEWHERE15 and you'll get 15% off all denims and jeans patterns. Kate has included not only the ginger jeans, but the Jenny overalls and Lander pants in this deal. So if you love indie sewing patterns but hate taping them together, pick up your patterns and supplies from The Confident Stitch.
Visit sewhere.com/confident. Use code SEWHERE15 to get 15% off denim and jeans patterns. That's SEWHERE15.
Thanks so much, Confident Stitch. Sewing out loud. And we're back. I want to talk about the productivity thing here. So, a lot of people know that I'm kind of obsessed with Brene Brown because she's so awesome. She is a sociologist, and she's started her research in shame research is what she researched, and it's brought her into this like, I don't know, multi-channel publishing career, and she's kind of a juggernaut in that way, and she's like a celebrity sociologist kind of now, but she does really good work. And so she talked about,
She probably doesn't sew though, but anyway, go
no,
ahead.
she does not. She's one of those people who's like, okay, this is so perfect, because she talks about productivity being an indicator of self-worth for some people. And you know, first when you hear about that, and this was discussed on the podcast I like, Straight and Curly, the hosts were like, oh, productivity as a indicator of self-worth. Like, sure, yeah, like why not? Why wouldn't we use that as an indicator of our self-worth? What's bad about being productive? Why wouldn't we use that as an indicator? And like when I'm listening to Brené Brown and she's talking about self-worth, and she says, sure, you might think that productivity would be a great way to derive self-worth,
Right.
and I'm like, yeah, sure, and she's like, well, it's not. And I was like, wait, what? And so the reason is because, well, one reason could be relevant to this podcast that you all of a sudden get this disease.
And someone says, you will be sick forever.
And it's true.
Yep.
And you are sick and you cannot be as productive as you were formerly.
Right.
And if you were truly to derive all your self-worth from being productive.
And a lot of people do.
Yes, they do.
And it's been put on you too.
Yeah. Oh,
if you can't do that, you're not worth
worth anything.
Yeah.
What good are you?
Right.
If you can't do
Right.
something. But now you have this chronic illness, and that's just been taken away from you,
Right.
in to some degree or another. And so, boom, that if that's where you've been placing your self-worth, that can be really damaging.
Right.
It can also be if you don't have a chronic illness.
Get yourself a counselor.
There you go. Yeah, everybody go to a counselor. I don't care who you are. Okay. Find
And
one.
it might not work out. Look for another one. There has to be a good fit.
I wish that mental health care was more accessible in this country than it is. I don't feel like I have a chronic illness, and I go to a counselor. So
We're all glad you do.
Thank you. So anyway, what I'm saying is, even if you don't have a chronic illness and you put productivity, if you make that your source of self-worth, well, the next time the project goes through and you don't get the praise or the acceptance, boom. But then if you do get the praise and acceptance, well, okay, you got to do it again.
That's
you have
right.
to keep performing, and so it's this idea of inherent worth of all people. They should all be
Right.
respected, that everyone is worth, love and health and, things like that. We are all worthy of those things no matter our level of productivity,
And I will tell you a good place to look for that inherent acceptance, right?
Yeah.
Is that dog or cat you have.
Dog.
Like, they don't know you're sick, right? They don't, as long as they get fed, they still love you, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
So that is
They will go to the bathroom with you too, by the way.
that's something that I think is hard for, I'm just going to speak from my experience, like the American experience.
I
And
think so too.
Actually, this has come up in like two pieces of art or literature that I've been reading. This idea of, I'll just quote White People, the show that I just worked on. He talks about the Protestant work ethic and, God helps those who help themselves. And this character also said, outer wealth was seen as this indicator of inner faith, during this time of, he's talking about like the Dutch Reformed Church. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that those are things that I believe, but I think you can see those tendrils weaving their way into our society. Oh, that person has a successful business. They are more worthy than the
Right.
other person.
Well, and here's the other thing. You call them successful. And success is an arbitrary word, really.
There you go. And so, what are we saying a person has to do
Right.
in order to be worthy? And I think that can all of a sudden, when those things are taken away from you, and they can be taken away from you in lots of different ways, not just through
Right.
a chronic illness,
Right.
but through this, all of a sudden, boom, that's gone. You don't have a way to be as productive as you once were.
Well, and, I'm sure there's many people that are in the same boat that I was, is I had been healthy for the majority of my life.
Yes.
I had not suffered much. I had not, I always felt that I was healthy.
Right. And you were hyper productive.
And that's funny because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Till I stopped being as productive, and people said, "Oh no, you don't realize you were 130%."
You were doing a lot.
I'm
of
like,
stuff.
"No, I wasn't," and people were telling me. So again, perspective
Right.
also has
Yes.
a lot to
So I think you were used to doing more, you were used to being this hyper productive person. And when I say hyper productive, I don't think that's like a bad thing. Like
Right.
it sounds kind of
Well,
negative when I
my
say it
counselor
like
constantly reminds me that even now I'm more productive than a lot of people.
that. Sure.
And I don't consider myself at my old normal. you know.
Sure. And so, but like I said, so the fact that that's even like coming to the forefront like of your mind.
Right,
you
right.
know,
And
I
it's
think
there.
It
Yes.
indicates that that's an insecurity that we can
Right.
feel. Yeah. And then so I wanted to read another one here. Oh, I've lost it. Okay, well, chronic fatigue syndrome. Here we go. So okay, I have chronic fatigue syndrome and have had it for about 9 years now. I also have 2 boys, 5 and 7-year-old. So other than normal family life, it is the fatigue that gets in the way the most. I never realized how physical sewing can be until I started tracing patterns, taping patterns together, and cutting fabric. I'm laughing because I hope you're not just tracing. I hope I'm not a cause of your.
It's all Mallory's fault. She made you join Team Trace.
I made you trace these things. These 3 things are the hardest steps for me to complete, as I have to be on my feet and concentrating for a stretch of time. The fatigue also prevents me from sewing in the evenings because of a combination of a tired body, tired mind, and tired eyes.
Yeah.
No joke, man. I mean, having a 5 and a 7-year-old on its own. So she also says, I am lucky, however, that I have a supportive husband and am able to find the time here and there to fit in some sewing. So I wanted to talk about like, something that I think that you wish I would do to support you in your chronic illness is to keep the studio clean, right?
Right. And
how can you?
well, and that frustrates me on more than one level.
Yeah.
Because I always kept it straight and organized, and efficient was my word. Keeping it efficient. And I can't, I don't want to use the energy to clean it up. I want to use the energy to sew.
Right.
So, prior to being ill, had I walked in on a messy studio, bam, 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 I would have cleaned it up and started sewing.
Mm-hmm.
So if I walk in and I have to like start straightening up or looking for something or something like that, that may use my energy up.
Yes.
And then I don't have the energy to sew.
And so if you have a chronic illness, if you can ask your family members or those around you, for help in doing
Right.
things, that can be nice, but I know not everybody has, a supportive environment. And with us and like our business, what I try to do, I try to be as flexible as possible, when I'm asking you to do something, except for when we need to last minute.
Well, I think here's the other thing, Mallory.
Yeah.
For the person who has the chronic
Yes.
issues, the chronic problems, the chronic lack of energy, sometimes it's hard to know what you need.
Yeah.
And this is a job only you can do for yourself is figure. And so I've just gotten over pneumonia. So you've been told, you're sick forever, and now you got pneumonia,
Right.
or now you got cancer, and all that happens too. But so I
did have cancer.
Yeah, I had that too.
Okay. Just
So all it did was really piss me off. But anyway, so I was supposed to keep your nephews, right?
Yeah.
This weekend and or like today and
Like right
through
now.
the night, right? Whatever. And here I'm on the tail end of like pneumonia, and your sister knows this, and she's like, okay, am I supposed to still bring them over? What am I supposed to do? What can I, tell me what to do. And I said, it's fine, but you need to tell me what to feed them so I don't have to think about it.
There you go. Yeah.
That's something that's sometimes hard for me. I want to know what food I need to have here and what they'll eat and what's easy and and she said, don't worry about it. I'll bring the food.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that took a big pressure off of me. Now you might say, oh, but she brought the kids over. She could like find someplace else. Okay, that's sad for me.
Yeah.
If I can't take care of my grandchildren. So you have, there's a lot going on there.
Catch-22
Like
there.
I don't want everybody to think I'm so sick I can't have my grandchildren.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I find it hard, like, when I'm asking you if you're okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want it to come across as me being like, oh, my old sick mom.
Well,
or,
again, that's what I mean, is like imposing like a sense of incompetency on the sick person.
Right. So it's like, sometimes I feel like I'm trying to be helpful. And so the open communication is important there.
I mean, you really have to be frank about it. And you may even have to think out loud and say, I don't feel good, but I still want the boys to come over.
There you go.
And then maybe someone will say to you, well, what's the hardest part for you? Or, whatever, I don't know, that's my example. There are other examples.
Well, that question of like, what's the hardest part for you? I think that's really cool thing to maybe be able to identify. And because if you're distributing your spoons, this anonymous person wrote in, and actually, I believe this is a gentleman. And so I just wanted to let people know we got
men get sick too.
Men sowing with chronic illness as well. I think they're a little underrepresented in our community. But what's your biggest obstacle to sowing? Not enough spoons, energy to take care of the basics and sew.
Yes.
Okay. And then he says, how's sowing beneficial to managing your chronic illness? Of all the things I can do to elevate my mood, this is on the lower end of spending energy. So sewing is that low point of entry for this person.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then the uplift lasts longer. Every time I wear, use, or sew one of my creations, it is uplifting. The only thing more uplifting is when someone I taught to sew or knit shows off their creations. Mm-hmm. So that, when you're talking about the grandkids, it satisfies you to be like, I get to take care of my grandkids. I get to see my grandkids.
One of my big hang-ups is I don't want my grandchildren to grow up and think of me as the sick grandma.
Yeah, yeah.
That bothered me a lot.
Yeah.
Like the grandma that couldn't do anything with them, or the grandma, that for some reason did bother me quite a bit. Well, it still does. I still think about it, of course. I mean, none of these things go away. None of it goes away. You just cope with it, or you find a workaround, or you adjust in some way, because it doesn't go away.
Right.
It's here to stay.
So finding that hardest part might be good when you are managing those spoons, those chips, whatever your energy level. So do you ever feel like this is a funny thing that I think comes up with you? I'm sure you'll run away with this topic. Like when you have a bunch of energy, you think you have a bunch of energy. Tell me what happens. Tell me what happens.
Well, yeah, sometimes you forget you're sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you use it, you're going strong, and then bam, like I said, you hit the wall that you forgot, and it's kind of a euphoric feeling for you if you can truly forget you're sick for an hour.
Right.
You
don't want to be reminded.
And I don't know if you can remember, but I remember this too. When I first became, ill, I would say to, especially, my girls, make me laugh. God, just do something to make me laugh. Like
sometimes I think you'd come into the shop and it would
I just begged for endorphins.
Yeah, we would be with employees or something, and we'd start talking and laughing, and I felt like you were like, oh, this, has made me feel better. Right.
I mean, finding the pleasure in life, and because I use up all my endorphins on the pain and on the fatigue, and
like I said, you were hyper productive, and I feel like you used to, like when you were really healthy, you used to like kind of just go into the wee hours of the morning.
Right.
You'd skip meals.
Right.
You'd da, and then like I
probably what's part of made me sick.
Well, no, and I must say that personally, I'm trying to be like, no, I should not skip meals.
Right. You should
I should get enough sleep. Like the most important, like if I'm having anxiety about something at 2 a.m, I will be like, the most productive thing for me to do right now is to go to sleep.
Right.
Now, that's not always worked for me.
I was going to say, it's not like,
it's a nice thought.
Click magic, you can do it. Right.
Yes, it's a place I've come to, so anyway, but every once in a while, I feel like sometimes I try to pace. I'd be like, let's take a break for lunch. And you're like, oh man, I've got the energy right now.
Right.
And I understand that, I see where you're coming from.
Right.
Like, I got the energy right now.
Well,
let's
and
just finish
and
this
it's
thing.
true. Like
You're
like
afraid
I might
go.
have this energy, and I'm like, well, if we wait, or will I accidentally use it up before I get there? Or it's very aggravating to me.
Yeah.
Very aggravating to me. I don't like it at all. The other thing about sewing, versus, if you, I'm trying to think of an activity. I keep thinking of physical activities, but there are things like sewing, knitting, whatever, drawing. Those things you can break down. Oh, I will get my fabric out and I will pick what I want and I'll lay it here in a pile and I know I'm going to do something with this. Or, if you paint, I'll get the canvas out. I'll get the paints out I'm going to use. So, you get your supplies ready. And then you can think about it.
Breaking it down into these
Yes.
small things seems to be good for like anyone with limited time,
Yes.
which I think is
Time or energy, same thing
is
almost.
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
obviously we feel it's important to highlight the
Right.
effects of chronic illness, but yeah, like
No, it is a solution for everything.
so if
yeah,
you
for
if you can
lots
think
of things.
if you can think of your chronic illness as, yes, I have less time, how am I going to deal
Right.
with that, versus I'm a terrible person because I'm not as productive as I used to
Now,
be.
I will tell you a couple of things that it's done, like accident, nice little
Uh-huh.
accidents is, yeah, I got the fabric ready and I laid it out and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go lay down. I cannot keep going. I just have to go lay down or there won't be anything of me left. And I will go lay down and all of a sudden it's like, oh, not only can I
Shouldn't
use
do it that way, or-
fabric, but I could do it this way and flip it back that way. And then I would, and I can think. Now, sometimes I get so tired I can't think. I
Yeah.
mean, that happens too.
This reminds me of when I was doing the zine for Foundations Month, and then I was called away to, like watch my own children. And I realized while I was playing with them that I had done something
Weird.
terribly wrong.
Yeah.
And weird. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so
Not
much.
the way to do
this-
it. You
okay,
need
well,
to do it the other way.
I need to go fix it. So anyway, yeah, taking a break can be good, but it's hard to know. Like, breaks don't work for everybody.
No.
Yeah.
And
right?
deadlines are terrible if you have a
Mhm.
chronic illness, and also that feeling of disappointing someone else.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
know, oh, if I can't do it, I have to tell them I can't do it because I'm sick. People, do people want to hear this? That was a big thing for me. Yeah, that's still hard for me. Still hard for me.
Sure. So, thank you I did not get to read everyone's responses.
But we know you're out there.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing. And I hope that everyone, feels at home in our community discussing these things. Discussing.
And this is absolutely something to go on. I mean, okay. I'm really careful about who I tell, like I'm sick, because I don't always appreciate people's recommendations, okay?
Right.
Or I get very tired of them, or they're making recommendations and they have really no idea what's going on,
Mhm.
And people like to do that, okay? But you can go on our,
Page,
the
group.
the Facebook group and say, wow, I'm having so much trouble. I am discouraged. Has anybody got, a clue or a
Right.
a suggestion or an idea? Or is there anybody out there that this happens to? What do you do when it happens? And just scroll past the ones that tell you to, put a potato in your sock or something.
Well,
I mean,
you can also, too.
I mean, if they're aggravating, and that is something you have to learn.
No, you
it's
need-
what people say to you is just
What you should
know.
say in your post is, I'm not looking for some kind of miracle
right.
cure.
There will not be. There's not a cure for my disease right now.
Right.
I have a physician.
But asking about that, or just asking
Right.
for encouragement, sometimes that can be helpful.
Right.
Like, because, and I know that online communities are more accessible sometimes for people.
Well, it's
who,
also a vent.
know.
It's a place to vent.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, I did this, and now I can't even finish this because I'm so tired.
Right.
And nobody close comments if you don't want to hear them. If you just wanted to rant.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So, yep, we're here for support, for discussion, all that jazz. And thank you to everyone who responded. I very much appreciate the time you took to do so. And yeah, you can find us on Instagram. We are at SoHereCom. You can get a hold of me. I am Mallory at SoHere.com. And Zede, take it away.
So long and so happy.
Thanks for listening to Sewing Out Loud. For even more expert sewing advice, visit sewhere.com.